And welcome to Success at Scale, the podcast that covers business stories from experienced entrepreneurs, business leaders, and startup founders on how to translate business ideas into business results. I'm your host, Greg Stein, and today we're going to talk with James Simmons, founder and CEO of GameApart. James, thanks so much for joining us. I can't wait to get into it with you. Tell us about you, my friend.
Hey, Greg. Hey, man. Thanks for having me. About me. I'm a tech guy. I've been doing this probably too long now, but we'll see. I like to start companies. Apparently, I do. So right now, I'm working with GameApart. We started it during the pandemic. I guess we'll talk a little bit about how that came to be. Before that, my last company was Everyone Counts. It was a blockchain voting business. So we were out to change the world. We were eventually, not now, but eventually going to let people vote on your phones. And we were working kind of all the tech that needs to happen to make that a reality. To do that, to make that work and fund us while we did it, we were doing voting for private functions. Turns out there's more private voting in the world than public. So we were doing voting for like the Oscars, the Emmys, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that kind of thing. We sold that company in 2018. And then I was out just advising other businesses, kind of helping them get started or scale up. And then the pandemic hit, and I think life kind of blew up in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. But out of it, this is one of the things that came out of it. And now I'm having a blast with it, just rocking.
That's amazing. So GameApart, let's get into that. What is GameApart? What do you guys do?
So in a nutshell, we're games over Zoom. That's kind of the very short version. That's where we started, was just play games over Zoom. Where we are now, and it's been a journey to get here. We started out really focusing on friends and family, because that's what I was when I kind of started it. It was like I'm on hour 50 of Zoom calls in a week because I'm cooped up in the room I'm in now. And I just needed something to keep me sane. And so we started out with friends and family and people playing over Zoom. We discovered that people want to do it. And even now that the pandemic's kind of hopefully getting behind us, people still want to do it, but it's really hard to make money with that. Where the money has been all these companies that have remote teams now, right? Like everyone's gone virtual, everyone's gone remote. And they need ways to have fun together, stay in touch, build team culture, kind of all the things that you used to do by going out to lunch or going to a team happy hour and all that. And so GameApart, we're always there for friends and family to go play free and have a blast online. But a lot of our focus now is in team building, culture building, employee wellness. Like, how do we make it fun for all the remote workers of the world?
I love it. And how long have you been doing this now?
So we started in, let's see, I guess the first meeting was May of 2020. So we're coming up on almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. That really flew by.
It's amazing, right? No, it's crazy. The pandemic, I was talking with somebody earlier today, and we were talking about, oh my goodness, like I have been working with people for 2.5 years or something crazy like this. I've never met them. I've never interacted with them in person, right? I probably couldn't tell you who they were other than their, cool outline on the screen here, right? But
yeah.
But it's crazy. And you realize, oh my God, I've been doing that for 2.5 years,
Yeah, and it's so strange. And like, you don't, and at the beginning of this, you knew people, right? Like when you first started, and I say this, it wasn't really my situation because I was doing a lot of work from home or traveling and all that. But for most people working at the beginning of this, when you started into it, it's like we had shared experiences. We knew each other. We'd gotten to know each other. And now we're in the middle of this crazy time. So it's like, well, we're all in this together. We're going to hunker down. We'll figure it out. It's kind of fun. It's unique. It's different. Well, now 2 years in, it's like, okay, this is kind of the new normal. And I haven't met you. I don't know you. And how do I get to know you? Because, we've got the 9 o'clock call, and then we've got the 1 p.m. call, and we got the tag up at 2. And then I'm going to go pick up my kids, but probably not tell you that I'm leaving to go pick up my kids at 3:30. And it's like, where in that do you just start getting to know somebody? Like, where's the time? No one, we're all supposed to. I think, your HR group will say you're supposed to, but no one puts 15 minutes on the calendar to say, get to know you better, right? Like that just doesn't happen.
Right. Well, it's
Um,
funny. That's why I love these conversations, because we're not sitting here going, okay, in the next 10 minutes, we have to have our agenda complete. And then in 10 minutes later, goodbye. Right.
right.
Like, I'm actually getting to know you right now. That's why for me, these conversations are so meaningful. And quite frankly, this is what used to happen every day of the week when you're sitting in an office somewhere. Right. I mean, you walk over to somebody's desk. Hey, how's it going? What'd you do this weekend? All that's like gone right now.
Right. Yeah. You want to go grab lunch, or what about your kids? Oh, you've got kids.
Right.
Cool. And I mean, just the little stuff.
Well,
And
now the kids, they come on camera and they do the work, right? No, I'm just kidding.
no,
It's a
that's true.
different,
Right now, yeah, you see the kid or you hear the
right,
kid, or, I mean, at some point in the next hour, because my baby is right through this wall,
right on.
napping right now. So she will wake up. There'll be a few minutes of crying. It'll happen, most likely, but that's our life now, right? That's just
It
what we've
it's
all
all
gotten.
part of the fun, man. It's interesting. So this brings up a unique question. Where do you think all this goes? Like, is this the new normal? Like, or hybrid? Is it here
I,
to stay? Where do you think it goes?
yeah, I think that the hybrid workspace is the new normal. Um, and I mean, I can, and I, there's statistics I can quote, right? Because I have to, because I'm out trying to pitch investors on them. But Gardner says 57% of knowledge workers are going to be remote or hybrid remote by the end of 2022. Microsoft says it's higher. I mean, and there's more out there, but push all that aside, push all the numbers crap aside. I mean, intuitively, I think we all know it, right? That there are companies that are bringing folks back to work, but even the companies that are bringing people back, it's still like the idea that you have to be in the workplace, except for some jobs. Obviously, there's certain jobs where you just got to be there, but the idea that you have to be there for the pure sake of productivity and all that, that's kind of gone. And it's the myth has been shattered, and so people are going to be remote 1, 2, 5 days a week. um, Companies can start anywhere. You can be totally virtual. I think this is where we were going anyways, but the pandemic just accelerated it by 10 years. And now I don't know how you walk that back in a meaningful way. I think it'll normalize. It'll come down from whatever crazy percentage it was for a while. But I think it's the new norm for us. And I think we've not learned collectively how to deal with it. I think we're still kind of coasting on, this is still all new and fresh.
It's just been very interesting. So let's go back to you. Let's
All right.
talk about your hobbies and interests that are, outside of work. And these
Ooh.
days, maybe it's inside of work. I don't know.
I do get to combine the two a lot these days, which is a blessing. But no, I mean, if you get outside of that, um, like kid is a big one. So had the first baby kind of through the pandemic. Have a COVID baby.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you, and that is amazing. So that's certainly number one on things outside of work. Actually, it's number one period, and then work. I got to clarify that. Um, Outside, I'm a traveler. I'm an explorer. That's been tough the last couple of years, but I'm getting back out there, and actually learned, like, even kind of through the pandemic, there's a lot of exploring you can do in your own backyard. So that was pretty cool. Um, Whiskey. So I'm a whiskey guy. I collect scotch, and kind of getting into that. Not getting into. I've gotten into that world. Um, Love that. So the reason I do all of this is so that someday I can open a whiskey bar that doesn't have to make money. Like that's like that's the career. Like that's like the end state of all this
Amazing.
is get to where I can do it but not have to stress about it being profitable. Um, and then what else? I'm a skier, and that's probably the list. That's the stuff that jumps to mind.
That's awesome. So you're an active guy. You're hanging around some whiskey, and you're
Yep.
probably a gamer too, I would imagine.
So that actually wasn't on the list. So
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I like games. But I would not, before this, and even today, I wouldn't actually call myself a gamer.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's been a surprise. It's been one of those, like, people are like, wait, you got in gaming? I'm like, yeah, actually, that's maybe why I can do well in it. That's probably why I'll never make money at a whiskey bar, because you just get consumed by your own product.
Right. Right.
No, but I do. I'm. I'm a casual gamer, I'd say. Um, so definitely enjoy it. Have it, but it's been more so since all this started and through the pandemic than before.
So okay, so then as a non-official gamer guy, what do you
Yep.
think the future of gaming is? Right, you got all this stuff happening, the
So much.
metaverse, you got Web3, you got all this stuff happening right now. My head's gonna
So much.
explode.
It's
Where's it
so
going?
much. I mean, there's two parts to that, right? I mean, it is, and the easy answer, and I hate to say it because it's such a easy answer, but it is going to the metaverse. That is happening. That is it's such a real thing at this point. And not only because of gaming, but because I can't get away from metaverse conversations, talking to fintech companies, talking to legal tech companies. Like, this is where we're headed. I think that I've also, in our kind of pivot from consumers to businesses, I talk to a lot of investors, right? I mean, that's what you do, right? Is you pitch to a ton of investors, and if you're really lucky, a ton minus two tell you no, and you're left with a couple, but but and pretty much what everyone said was, look, man, in the gaming space right now, if you're not talking metaverse, NFTs, play to earn, AR or VR, you're not sexy. And unless you happen to have 10 million users, we don't really care. Like, it's just that's what's cool. Nothing else, no matter how great it is. Sorry, we just don't really, it's just not sexy. So those spaces, I think, is where it's going. Now, to me, of those, the one that I find most interesting from its kind of impact on society. I mean, the tech is fascinating to me by itself. Like, the tech side of where all that's going is really cool. But um, the place where it's going with kind of NFTs and crypto and play to earn, I think I resonate a lot with that, just because the blockchain background, and really kind of, I find, like, the gamification of life to be really interesting, right? Like I think that there's so much, so it's so interesting kind of what it does to our psyches when we stick a game around common tasks, right? Like, when you take something we're doing and put points around it, or make it into a competition, um and how that messes with our psychology, how that incentivizes us. To me, that's, I don't know, there's just something so cool in that I think we've just started scratching the surface. I think also, I'm blanking on which ones, but I've seen a bunch of movies where that goes, like, horribly awry. Right? I mean, like definitely, like, with some of, Black Mirror type episodes where, like, you over gamified life.
Right.
Um, but I think, to me, that's a big kind of, not untapped, because there's a lot of folks tapping it. But kind of the gamification of life in all of its different ways is where gaming and non-gaming are just coming together more and more. I mean, it's hitting education, it's hitting shopping, all these ways to incentivize people's behavior just by turning it into a competition or putting a score on it is insane to me.
Spot on, man. So let's go back. Let's go back. You were talking about venture there for a little bit, and let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
So you talked about, like, look, venture identifies patterns, right? The patterns that you called out, AR, VR, Web3, whatever, right? So if you're not in that, like, they're not interested. Do you think there's, like, something, like, do you think that's effective and efficient? Like, isn't it like, what if the next Uber or the next, we work, to use a bad example, right? Like,
Right.
what if that's sitting there, right? Like, are they just going to look past it? Do you think this model's kind of broken at all, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of pissing off a VC, I mean, I do think it's totally broken. I think that access to capital is, um, and and I say this, I mean, it's such a strange game, right? It's such a strange game of what are the patterns? Who do you know? What's your background been? And and I say this, we've raised money. successfully, and I've been in other companies where we raised money, but I do think the process is broken. Um, in that in that it's like, well, if you're just going to follow the trend, I mean, then
You're always
you're always
behind.
sort of trailing edge, right?
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
always
you're
behind.
never
That's
who
the
gets
problem.
ahead.
Yeah.
And I put that question to one the other day, and they said, "Well, that's angels and pre-seed funds." I'm like, well, I mean, okay, fair enough, right? I mean,
Right.
but then where that I don't know if it's broken, but it's an unfair system. Is that basically says when I get that answer, when it's angels and pre-seed funds, um, or equity crowdfunding, which we've been through an equity crowdfunding campaign. And it's another whole way of going, but the that basically goes back to, at that level, at that super kind of early stage level, it's all about you, the founder. And so it takes it all back to what's your personal credibility, what pedigree and advantages or not are you bringing to the table. And so then it becomes, well, we'll fund you or not just based on what's on your resume, or who do you know, or who's in your Rolodex, and has nothing to do with how good the concept or the idea is. And it's just not, it's just not
Well,
something.
it's
Something could be
interesting you
different.
say that, right? Because the last few nights, for whatever reason, I've been watching some of these, documentaries on some of these, unicorn startups that have blown up, without naming names, right? Like there's some
Okay.
real good ones that are out on TV right now. And if you watch any of these, you see either the way they're portrayed or whatever, but it's the relationship between the entrepreneur and the VC in those situations really strikes me as like making promises that are larger than life in this utopian, perfect world that they're going to create, and this phrase that everybody's going to change the world and all this stuff. But then when it comes down to it, they don't deliver anything, right? It's just they're great storytellers, and that's a talent in itself. And it's like, I think there's a gap between the storytelling and the ability to actually scale and deliver and grow a business, a
Yeah.
sustainable business.
There is, one of the things that jumped out at me when I did GameApart, when I started GameApart, is, so before that, my life, as like in the fundraising realm, and the startup realm, was slightly later stage. Like I had never done the five guys in a garage virtually, obviously because pandemic, but I've never done the five guys in a garage thing before. I'd come in kind of, you know, late seed stage, A round, like that was kind of my jam before this. And so I had done fundraising, I'd advised a bunch of startups, but the fundraising I'd done was based on having a real product, a real story, real numbers, and a plan. It's like, this is what I'm doing, and then here's my plan, and I'm gonna apply your money to my plan, and these are going to be the results. But you could see it, and there was still storytelling. No, I mean that's always a factor, but it was story. It was a quantifiable story. Or if I'm, same thing with the folks I was advising. I mean, the reality was, if they could bring in advisors and all that, they were at a certain level. And when it shifted to a pure, I really struggled when it shifted to a pure, no, just, and I had person after person just say, I mean, you got to believe it, but make it up. Just make shit up. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I got to get this data. If you wait to get this data, you'll run out of money, or you'll burn through, your own cash at a horrifying rate. I'm like, but how do you just say that? Like,
Right.
like how do you just get in front of someone and weave this tale about how I'm going to turn playing, taboo over Zoom into a, $180 million a year business with a $1.8 billion valuation in 4 years? Like, how do I just get up there and chalk things up on a board and say this is what's going to happen with a straight face? Like,
It doesn't make sense. And
what are you
and
talking
unfortunately, I
about?
think this just plagues, like it's like everywhere. On one hand, Steve Jobs, he gets credited with a lot of this stuff, right? Because one of the great innovators of our time. But I think the difference is, he got in the trenches, designed and delivered products, that actually delivered monetary value, right? This
Hmm.
is a big difference than, just making promises or empty promises, right? And that to me is a fundamental difference between those who build, really meaningful, sustainable businesses and those who, tell these great stories.
Yeah,
But it's like
100%.
there's this whole myth though, like of everybody thinks you have to be this great storyteller and come up with it, and then we're all enamored by it, and then we're all like, yeah, let's write checks and get involved, right? It's like bizarre, right?
Yeah, and it is, and the first check comes, and then and then the others follow quickly. I mean, yeah, it's such a strange game, and and I think everyone, not everyone, a lot of people talk about how do we change the rules, how do we flip the script, and I think there are some really cool. Um, Certainly, there's some cool individual investors out there. There's some interesting funds out there that are trying to change that model a little bit, and I think they're sincere in their efforts, and I think some of them are pretty cool. But it's a blip, right? I mean, it's if you look at kind of, I mean, I get the reports every week of how many dollars are out there right now, and 99% of them are still kind of using it's the same it's the same thing of get a warm intro, have a lead, have a good story, and then we'll talk. And it's like, man, that's just so strange,
Well, the
such a strange
generally
thing.
accepted principle is that most of these businesses are going to fail. And then there's going to be the random unicorn that's going to save the day, right? Like that's the mathematical equation in all of this. And the reality is, wouldn't it be nice if, 50% of them won, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just the, 1 out of 10, right? Or whatever it is.
Yep.
That would be a better equation. Anyways, not for us to solve today.
Probably
But
not. If so, then we'll go make a whole lot of money together doing it, right?
that's right. That's right.
Which I'm game for, by the way. So if you got it, let me know. We'll I'll stop this and we'll go do that if you truly figured it out.
All right, sounds good, man. All right, so bringing it back to you, what kind of shaped, you in your life, like, and kind of brought you to where you are now as the CEO of GameApart? Like, what are kind of some of the things that have happened to you in life that have kind of shaped your role?
I mean, boy, lots of things. I mean, the some of the key ones that really jump out. I mean, one goes all the way back to school. Back to college. And it's the time in college when I got caught cheating and kicked out. Um,
Oh,
yeah, right. So
busted.
exactly. So I was not the great student. I was the great student in high school who showed up to college and was like, hey, I was a smart guy. I know what I was doing, and you know, gonna keep the party going. And turns out that didn't work. Um, when I started hitting, I don't know if college is the real world or not, but the next level of real world, that didn't fly. And so I was in school. I was getting my computer science degree, and I was dating a girl in another school that was an hour drive away. And so I was like, well, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for homework and crap. And so I started copying someone else's work. There, I said it right. So copying someone else's work, and submitting it. So I was in this computer science class, and this professor had written, a piece of software that actually looked at everyone's work, and it came back and said with like 94% certainty that these two guys were copying off each other. And so he called us out on it. He said, "What's going on?" And I fessed up and all that. And at the end of it, I got kicked out of that school. Um, and so I actually switched over to my girlfriend's school, started going there. So I went to USC, became a Trojan for a while. But like that was the first time in my life where I had ever just been like knocked on my ass. Like it's just, kind of, it's like I became the guy who was caught cheating, got expelled from a school, was, trying to figure all this crap out. Um, like the stuff it did to kind of my ego, my like everything. It was just like that was my big eye opener. I kind of set in my head that I was going to get back into that school. Like I was going to convince them that I'd mended my ways and all that. So for 3 semesters, like I convinced my advisor to meet with me and like check that like the classes I was taking would transfer over and like I would still be on track and all that. And eventually got that professor, stayed in touch with him, convinced him that yeah, basically because what the school told me was I needed his sign off for them to even consider readmitting me. And so
Wow.
stayed in touch and eventually got that and went back and graduated and all that. And I think kind of the combination of getting knocked on your ass, but then I kind of also like recognizing like if you just decide you're going to do something, um, even if they say we don't let people back in, I'm like, no, I'm gonna figure out how to do this. Like I'm not accepting this failure as like I'm not accepting that as like the permanent way this story ended. Like it's the ending is gonna get rewritten here. And doing that. I mean, that was I kind of go back and say that kind of was the start of just not accepting no for an answer. Um and figuring out how to kind of turn something around.
Well,
Um,
so that leads me to my next question. This is actually really good.
okay.
So right now, it's a time of uncertainty, man. You got inflation out of control, right? You've got people who are changing or looking for
Mhm,
work or whatever is going on out there. You got wars, you got all sorts of crazy stuff. It's just nuts.
mhm.
So for those who are watching this, who are struggling or trying to figure it out, or even just getting started for that matter, what kind of advice would you give to them, right now?
I think one is, I mean, it's that, right? It's don't take no for an answer. Don't stop. Don't give up. And I think kind of tied with that is most of the time, um, there's obviously external stuff that can just come and take you unawares, and there's only so much you can do about it, right? I mean, you could have had everything planned out in February of 2020, and then COVID comes along, and it's like, well, crap. I mean,
Been
not a
there,
whole
done
lot I
that.
could have done. Yeah, not a
Yes,
whole lot I could have done about that.
exactly right.
Um, but outside of kind of those sorts of events, I mean, most of the limits are stuff. It's they're artificial limits we put on ourselves. Um, and so and I certainly did it as I started up this company. No matter how many times I've given the same advice to others, is stopping and saying like, what artificial limits am I putting on myself right now? Right? Like what thing would change your circumstance, whether it's personal life, business, your own business, your job, like what would make it different if this one thing changed? And then why hasn't it changed? I mean, that can be anything from if I just had this kind of partnership, okay, well, who have you asked? Like who has, who, and I mean, right. And you hear this kind of advice all the time. It just amazes me how many people don't internalize it until they've been through it and been like, oh yeah, that really worked. It's like, who have you asked and how many times have you been told no? And and then you'll go on to say, you got to be told no 100 times, or 99 times before you get the one yes. What's shocking is how many people haven't even asked once for whatever it would be that would change their circumstance. Um, I yeah, I think it's I mean it's whether it's a partnership, a deal, an investment, a promotion, a different job. Um, one of the best employees I ever had, and I've had a lot of people work for me over the years. One of the best employees I've had was a young girl who was so this was back when I was in an office. It was, I don't know, 2013, 2014. I was in an office. I would walk across the street to a food court every day. And it was like this young girl who was managing like one of the restaurants. It was the Greek restaurant at the food court. And she always struck me as just on top of shit. She just knew what she was doing. She was hyper confident and all that. And we would chit chat. I'd get my food there like twice a week. And I talked about what I did, and I was kind of running a tech company, not tech company. Sorry, I was running a tech department in a company at the time, and she would talk about how she was always interested in that. She always wished she'd done it, all those things. One day she just said, so could I, like, is there any world in which I could work on your team? And I had a job in, service desk that had just opened up. And I was like, well, you know nothing about this, but I mean, I've watched you here all the time. You obviously are pretty competent. Interviewed her, gave her the job, and now she's doing project management for CRM implementations, um, making great money, loves her career and all that. And it's like, just ask,
Yeah.
right? Like, what is limiting you from doing what you want to do, and then tackle it. And you won't get it every single time, but a lot of times, I think people would be surprised at how often you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also sounds like, here is a person with a good attitude, is what it sounds like to me. I mean, she probably had some, a good attitude, a good presence, right? There was probably something also that went along with it that you were like, yeah, okay, that I could see that working.
Absolutely, I think that's it too, right? Is also is just being a good person.
Yeah.
I think a lot. I think karma's a real thing. I think
Yeah.
being a good person with a good attitude and a good personality. I mean, not only does it kind of manifest good things your way, but I don't know. I mean, I think we all want to just be around good people, right? I mean,
Totally.
that's who
Yeah.
I want to interact with all day. And
Likewise, likewise. No,
and
it's the most important thing, right? I mean, in fact, every single podcast that's come back to, people and passion and purpose, right? Those are the three things. We just did another podcast, and it was the same kind of thing. Every single time it comes back to that. But let me ask you this. Um, Productivity, and specifically for you, what's your productivity hack? How do you make sure that you're staying productive, especially when you're working remotely?
yeah, so one of the ones that I've come to really believe in, and it's sort of been a manifestation of having a baby, actually. So for me, it's I with the baby, right? You don't get any sleep. That's kind of a known thing.
Well
Um,
said.
and so the way that my wife and I tackled it was we took shifts overnight. So we just sort of agreed, rather than both of us not getting any sleep, you know, I would get to sleep from like 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. And then she would sleep from 3 a.m. to 9 or something like that, right? Like we'd each get shifts. So at least we'd get a decent chunk of sleep. So one, I mean, sleep is important. That's in there too. But what I found is I'd get up and the baby would sleep for most of it. But those hours in the morning, I found that I was just knocking out tasks, right? I'd have no meetings, nothing going on, no one's pinging me on Slack, and I started getting things done at a pace that just floored me. And so, now, I mean, she sleeps well, sleeps the night, and all that. I kept it going. I still get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I have my couple hours of productivity. Um, and because through the day it's like I've got GameApart, I've got three other startups that I'm working with right now. um and it just never stops. And even I think for all of us, right, we just get so busy, and you just find yourself on meeting after meeting and a task list that just never, right, it just grows and grows and grows. So I think carving out time, it doesn't have to be at 4 o'clock in the morning, but carving out time to get meaningful work, like focus time to get meaningful work done. And then the next piece to that was having a real system. I mean, and I've tried a bunch of different tools. I finally found a piece of software that I love, but tools to actually organize that time. So it's like when I get up, it's like I know what I'm going to get done in my little 3 hour stretch before the world wakes up.
What tool are you using?
It's called Motion.
Motion. Okay, yeah,
So
I've
it's
seen that.
it's
Yeah.
have you seen it? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of like Calendly and It's Calendly on steroids with some task management built in.
Right.
Um, but and I'm not necessarily here to plug them, but awesome tool,
Cool.
phenomenal tool.
That's good to know. Good to know.
Yeah,
So, what is there like one piece of advice that you would give someone, starting out right now? We kind of talked about, if you were up and coming, but if you're just getting started, specifically maybe in the gaming space, what would you, what's the one piece of advice you'd give?
I think the the gaming space. First of all, it's hard as hell to break in. Um, and so within gaming specifically, so this is hyper focused on industry. If you don't have a core loop, like a core game loop that'll acquire users, and you can't prove it, um, this sounds so black and white, but I'd say just don't try. Don't invest your time and money until you've got that figured out. Because there are so many folks out there who think I can start a game, I can write a game, and the users will come. There are so many good games out there that have just never seen the light of day. They've been built, they've got amazing artwork, they've got great effects, they've got probably even a good game, never seen the light of day. And so, if I could, and we went through that and we fought our way through that. I think if I could go back and start over, um, I would have. So we had all these models around viral growth, and the nature of playing games over Zoom is it doesn't work unless you invite 3 to 5 other people. And so there was sort of this. We had all the math about viral growth and all that. I would have tested and refined the hell out of that process before I had done nearly as much work. So when we started, we built a lot. And I'm a tech and a product guy, so we built a lot of platform, and we got it out there, and we got a couple games, not a ton, but we got a bunch of games out there and all that. And then we hit, and we burned a decent amount of money to get there. And then we found that of people who would sign up for our platform, 5% would actually go on to play just one game. 5%. And so we spent the next 4 months and another big chunk of money just iterating on that. How do we make that number go up? And we got it from 4 to 72%.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had done that at the beginning, I mean, if I had figured that out with just one game and started small, not built all this infrastructure about how was I going to charge people, and how was I going to serve them ads, and how was I going to do all this fancy stuff and bring in AR and multi-platform support and integrations with Zoom and all that. If I'd solved that problem on day one, my users would have been compounding that much sooner. I would have had traction to go raise money that much sooner. Um, all of these different things. And so, I think the fundamentals of, especially in this industry, the fundamentals of your unit economics, just can't overlook them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Makes total sense. So, James, what's one question that you wish I had asked you that I haven't asked you yet, and how would you answer it?
Yeah, no, well, so I mean, GameApart, as I said, we're taking it into this space of staying sane at work, staying sane in a remote workplace, and that started out as games and just being able to play games with people online, but we're taking it into the space of kind of being the companion on Zoom. And what we found is what people want is this combination. They have 5 minutes at the start of meetings, right? You've got this little dead time at the start and end of meetings that people would love to be able to do something with that keeps them fun, interesting, or productive. And we want to tackle that space. We want to have little activities, icebreakers, productivity hacks, whatever that can help in that. That's one area. The other is people want just games. They just want to schedule, or team building. They want to schedule, an hour of team building, and we'll do, and that's what we do. That's been our bread and butter. And then they want kind of the big events. They want the quarterly party, the Christmas party, that sort of thing. And where I'm personally, because I said it's our, we're I love whiskey and all that, and we've just signed partnerships with a couple folks to become like the virtual tasting platform for a couple whiskey distilleries, to kind of be able to use our tech is really the idea that you can pair your phone to a Zoom call and we can push content to it. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's what our platform is about. And so being able to do that, to gamify the process of tasting whiskey, and to say like, well, what tasting notes, right? And whoever gets the closest might get a free bottle, and like that kind of
You're
thing
really
is,
bringing it all together. I
and
love it. See the passion, the purpose, the people. I
that's where
told
we're
you.
going next, right? That's
It
it.
all comes together right
Yeah.
there.
Right. Now, I love it. You see it as passion, right? Like my team is like, dude, you did all this work just to get distilleries to start sending you free samples.
And
Like
you're like,
all this work,
yes.
2 years. I'm like, yeah. Like it's the long game, guys. It's all about the long game.
That's awesome.
So that's where we're going next. We're really super excited about it and kind of seeing where that can go, what we can do with it.
Well, James, this is an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I have one last question for you, which is important for you. Where can listeners find you online and your company?
Yeah, GameApart.com. And then GameApart on Twitter and Instagram. And then for me personally, I'm on Twitter, and it's back to the whiskey thing, Isla Gold.
Nice.
If you're a Scotch drinker. So that's us.
All right. Sounds good. Well, listen, James, thank you once more. Really, really enjoyed meeting you. Really excited to see what GameApart does next. Sounds like a lot of exciting things to come. And so for anybody listening out there, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that crazy, social media stuff. I'm Greg with Triple G Ventures, Success at Scale. Thanks so much for listening. Until we meet again, peace.